Hey, I'm James Swallow, and you guys should be watching the crew reviews.
Hey boys, look
Yes,
who we have
Michael.
on the show today, Mr. James Swallow and his latest novel, Airside, out now.
Cheers.
James, how are you? Cheers.
I'm
Cheers.
good. Cheers, chaps.
Mm.
He's the only one out here that says that correctly. Us Americans, we trash that pretty badly.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
James, you're really incredibly prolific career. It includes 55 plus novels, screenplays, and you work on some of the biggest action videos out there. But we are here to talk about Airside. This is your newest novel. So can you give our audience a 36,000 foot view of what they can expect on this roller coaster of a ride?
So, Airside is kind of drawn from the worst experience that anybody who's ever flown on an airplane has had. And I'm not talking about bad guys hijacking your plane. No, worse than that.
Yeah.
Being stuck in a dingy airport, getting bumped off your flight by some dickhead with a loyalty card, and just being stuck there all night long with nowhere to go. We've all had that experience. Anybody who's ever done air travel has been in that place. And you know, it's just the worst thing ever. It's so boring. It's so dull. And I wanted to write a story about that and just spin it on its head.
Yeah.
So I thought, how do I tell a story about being in that situation, about being locked in that little box in that airport, in that weird experience that you get in Airside, you know, because it's not quite like being on the plane. You're not quite here. You're not quite there. You're in this weird little netherland, and it's all kind of strange. I wanted to take that idea and combine it with a what would you do in this situation kind of story. So
Nice.
The hero of my novel is a guy whose life is imploding. He's doing a business deal. It's all falling apart. He's going home to rack and ruin. He's going to be bankrupt. He's losing absolutely everything. He has a terrible relationship with his daughter. It's all going wrong for him. And then just to put the cherry on top of the poop sundae, he's kicked off his flight and he's stuck there in the airport. But then he finds a bag of money, 2 million euros in loose change. And he has the option, do you want to take that money? But you can't run. He's stuck in the airport. He has the money that can save his life, his career, the whole thing. But who does that money belong to? Well, it belongs to bad people, and they want it back.
Yep.
That's the crux of the story.
Yeah. Well, how long have you been stuck in an airport before?
Well, for me, I did the overnight thing. You know,
You did?
I got bumped off a flight.
Nice.
I was coming back from Montreal, and I flew back via Paris. And I got to Paris and they were like, no, you know, you're going to have to stay here. And I was like, no, this is a joke. No, sir. No, monsieur, you're going to have, and you know, and I find it difficult to kind of just unwind in those sort of places. So I couldn't sleep. So I was just wired all night long.
Yeah. I got stuck in Frankfurt last fall. And that's when Omicron hit. And they said, can't have your luggage and you can't go home.
That's crazy.
And I was just like flabbergasted. So I felt every second of what this guy was going through when I was reading this book.
That's the thing. It's kind of like that nails down a chalkboard kind of like, oh man, because we can all experience, we've all had that kind of, that moment of that kind of low ebb where you think everything's just coming apart around you. And it seems like every tiny little thing that goes wrong, like even if it's like the lid on your coffee cup won't fit right, it's like, every tiny little thing is the universe just going,
one more, just one more. Yeah.
Just one more, jabbing you one more time, kneeing you in the balls one more time.
That's so true.
And that's the experience that I wanted to kind of replicate there, because I think everybody's had that.
Yeah, you replicated it. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great, you know. And I like telling stories about the kind of the wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time. I like stories about guys who are maybe not the toughest guy in the room. they're not the smartest or the quickest or the slickest guys. They're a little bit more ordinary. They kind of have to run to keep up a little bit. But I think at the end of the day, those guys, I like the fact that they kind of earn their victory a little more than the kind of slicker.
That's true.
That's actually a great segue into my question. So like you, I'm a fan of the everyman heroes and thrillers. I much more than the Superman types. But Kevin Tyler is not just an everyman. He's really kind of a bit of a mess. And that's probably why I personally related to him so well. Can you tell us a bit about the genesis of that character? And did you have a strong picture of his flaws before, or did they kind of emerge as the story unfolded?
Well, I wanted to do a story. There's the phrase that a friend of mine came up with. He talked about dadsploitation movies. The kind of the movies like the Taken is the archetype of that movie. The kind of like the dad as action hero, and there's a whole kind of subgenre, mostly starring Liam Neeson. Let's be honest, right? I like the idea of that concept of the guy who's kind of, he's either aged out of being a hero or he's just never been a heroic kind of character, being put in that pressure cooker situation that we're used to seeing two-fisted, two-gun action heroes in. So I had that frame that I wanted to put it in, and I thought, well, who can I make the most ordinary guy possible? And I started building him from the ground up. I thought, I'm gonna model him a little bit on myself and on members of my family and my peers, people I know who are decent, hardworking guys who maybe kind of, work things at the side, work a little grift on the side here or there, but you're decent kind of blue collar working class guy who has tried all through his life to kind of do the right thing, but through different circumstances, he's a little beaten down, and frankly, he's a bit of a screw up. Yeah. And I felt like that gives him somewhere to go. You can empathize with those sort of things, even if you look at it and you go, for crying out loud, man, snap out of it.
Right.
You can look at it that way, or you can be more sympathetic and say, oh wow, I really feel for this guy. But either way, you feel connected to him and you want to see him pull himself up by his bootstraps. So hopefully that means you root for him. So I had that element of the character, and I wanted to give him a foil, because I thought, well, if he's stuck there in the airport, he's got nobody to talk to. Do I want to have a character in the airport that he can have a conversation with? And I thought it would be more interesting to externalize that relationship. And that's where the idea of him having this fractured relationship with his daughter comes from. Because they love each other very much, but they just can't communicate very well. Yeah. So all of this stuff is being lost in the ether between the two of them. And both of them, I think, are afraid that they're going to disconnect and drift apart, which would be the worst thing ever for them. So they're trying to come back together, but they just keep getting in their own way. Yeah. And to me, that feels like a really human kind of problem to have.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
So taking that kind of personal drama moment and then fitting that into a kind of action story, for me, I thought that's a really fun thing to do. And it was a very different tone from my previous Mark Dane action thrillers, which are a bit more kind of widescreen. It was, I'd done a lot of kind of globe-trotting, running and gunning, shooting, driving, car chases stuff. And I thought, well, how can I tell an action story with a different tone? So I thought I'll draw the focus right in. So it's just gonna be one guy, his relationships, and he's in this pressure cooker. It's like I put him in a box and I shake the box up. Yeah. And that's where the story comes from.
Well, James, it's so funny. It's a pretty good segue into my question now, because I've heard you mention in previous interviews that you're a firm believer in shedding a little blood and gunning the engine in the opening phase of a thriller. But you took a different approach with Airside, allowing readers the time to get to know and better understand the characters before the action actually really ratchets up, and it does. So did that sequence unfold naturally, or was that you were talking about a little bit? Was that a calculated decision about?
Oh, that was totally a deliberate choice on my heart. Because like I said, I wanted to try something a little bit different. And I thought, well, most action stories start with a bang. Right. I love doing the kind of like, the book kind of punches you in the face on the first page. You're like, whoa, where am I going? And I did think, I thought very hard about doing the kind of the old trick of showing the very last scene first. So you get the opening action, there'd be an action moment, and it would be like 24 hours earlier.
Yeah, take it back.
And I thought, I like that, but it's a little bit tropey and it's a bit on the nose. And in the end, I came back to, Chris, the point that you made there about, I need to get people to care about this guy.
Yeah.
Even if they kind of feel negatively towards him, even if they feel like I don't really like him very much, I want you to invest in him. So to do that, I had to take you on a bit of a journey. And I also do the same kind of with the supporting characters as well. It's like, they're all coming from different directions. They all have their own sets of problems. Some of their problems kind of mirror other characters' problems as well in the story. I love doing that. I love doing the kind of one thing reflecting another. That I always think that's fun to write like that. So that was my idea for doing, it's the slow burn style. And also I hoped that I would kind of sucker people into thinking, oh, this is going to be kind of gentle and it's not going to be as unpleasant as the other stuff. And then so I get you deeper into the book, and then I punch you in the face.
That was a good punch in the face.
That was that was definitely a deliberate thing on my part.
But we talk about how Kevin's going through this financial crisis, and he's invested all these hours and years into this business, and it's just crumbling all around him, and how he's worried as a parent how that's going to impact his daughter. Was this additional kind of COVID / post-COVID where the economy's kind of been in the shitter, and even now we're going into kind of a world level depression? Was that ever a calculus in terms of adding more just to what he's going through? Because you've got more and more people in the real world going through these situations now based on what's been happening the past few years. Was that even just more on top of like how they relate with the character? Like, we're all kind of suffering now. We can all see the situation. Did you have any of that part of the calculus in saying, would I take the money? Probably, yeah.
I think you're definitely right. I think like if this book came out, say 5 years ago, people might look at it differently and say like, oh no, I wouldn't take the money, Yeah. And like you say, a lot of people are in a situation now where they wouldn't even, fuck yeah, I'll take the money. Wouldn't even have a second to think about it. I think, you can't write anything without having your antenna picking up the real world around you. So I don't know if consciously I picked up on that, but maybe I subconsciously I picked up on that. I mean, we've all gone through, for the last 2 years, we've all gone through stress for various different things. For COVID's just one element of it, and definitely. So I would say probably subconsciously, there's definitely a reaction to that as well. And there's a little bit of a reaction to me kind of kicking against Brexit is in there as well.
That's right.
Which is a big sort of big deal and a big stressor for people here in the UK. But it's not a political novel. It's not about politics, that kind of stuff. But the relationship between the UK and Europe has changed. And that was definitely something that I used in the book, because one of the things I wanted to do was isolate Kevin and really make him feel like, he doesn't have a friend in the world. Yeah. And one of the ways I did that is that's why I set the book in Germany. Because
I was going to say, that's why it was in Germany. Yeah.
But he doesn't really speak the language very well. So he's kind of, even though all German people I've ever met speak brilliant English, he still feels isolated because he's not home. He's in this alien place, And so once I started doing that, I thought, well, I can't write that kind of book without at least subconsciously addressing the idea of the kind of, there is a bit of a void between, between the UK and the rest of Europe now because of decisions our government has made. And that is definitely a subplot in there, but that's not what the book's about.
Yeah, right. No, I think we understand as readers, and they will too when they see this.
For sure. Well, James, Airside is your first standalone novel after building a successful series with your Mark Dane books, and after so many tie-in novels and television shows and video games that if I listed them, I'd need a tank of oxygen. Yeah. Crazy. But how did the experience of writing a standalone differ from all that came before it?
Well, with this, I mean, I've been writing my Mark Dane since 2016, started with Nomad with that series, and going through all 6 books, finishing with Outlaw, the most recent one. And when I started with Nomad, I kind of had an idea that I wanted it to be a series of books. And I had this kind of vague idea, well, you know, here's 4 or 5 story ideas I've got. And as I started to write that series, a kind of arc evolved. And I realized, okay, I've got a structure here. And so I plotted the books out. I left a little wiggle room so I could kind of discover stuff along the way. But when I got to book 6, it was kind of like a natural sort of, this is a kind of point where I can kind of put these characters down for a while. People have said to me, like, is Outlaw, it's the final book, it's the final Mark Dane book. I said, no, absolutely not. I do not intend it to be the final Mark Dane book, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I would love to come back and write more about those characters because there's more stories for me to tell. But it was kind of like the end of a phase. You know how the Marvel guys have like their phases of movies.
Yeah.
That was the way the example I said. I said, okay, well, this is my Avengers Endgame, right? This is what I'm doing. I'm closing off one phase of the story, but I can come back and tell more. So once I was done with that 6, I said to my agent, you know, I feel like I should give these characters a vacation and myself one as well.
Yeah.
And let's do something different. And I've always been a great believer in challenging yourself as a writer. Because, I mean, you know, like you said, I used to write, you know, I still do occasionally, a lot of tie-in stuff and a lot of genre fiction. The reason I wrote Nomad was because I wanted to do something different. I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone and say, well, let's not do this thing. Let's do like sci-fi and kind of genre stuff is one of my favorite genres, but thrillers and action stories are my other favorite genre. And I'd never written really in that world. I'd done a tie-in novel for 24. That was like my first kind of thriller experience, but I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to write my own characters, as much fun as it is to write Jack Bauer, you know, which is pretty cool. So I said, right, I'm gonna push myself out of my comfort zone. And if you read Nomad, the character in that is a guy who's out of his comfort zone. So I'm kind of channeling all that energy into my character. Once I was done with the 6, I'm like, okay, well, you know, you've done 6 books. Now you need to challenge yourself, mix it up a little bit, shake it up, do something different. So that was why I decided I would go and, you know, I'll do a standalone book, close focus, and that was Airside. And I'm going to do another standalone novel that's going to follow on. It's not going to be connected to this one, but it's going to be a sort of standalone kind of thing. So it was a very different experience for me because I knew I couldn't leave anything on the table. So I had to put it all there in the story because I'm not going to be able to come back later and go, well, I can explore that character arc.
Yeah.
2 or 3 novels from now. It's like, no, it all has to be here. It has to be compact, complete, a discrete object of a story that has beginning, middle, and end, and it's all right there.
Was there a bit of working without like a safety net feeling as you were writing this? You know, without the familiar world of Mark Dane?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I mean, one of the things about doing tie-in work is you get great support because you get like a kind of whole toolbox.
Yeah.
Right.
Characters and worlds and environments and stories that you can draw from.
You just pick and choose.
And you know, and it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because you have it's like, great, I've got all this stuff. I've got a built-in audience. I've got all this material I can use, draw out of this box, all these things. But you also have a massive weight of expectation from people who are familiar with the franchise, right?
Don't screw that up, brother.
And you know what it's like, right? You get that stuff. Boy, howdy, will they tell you? You know. So doing the Mark Dane stuff is, I'm like, okay, I can set my own universe up, and nobody gets to tell me how it works. You know,
right?
Doing it when you're isolating it down to just one book, it's a very different experience. But I really like the challenge of it, you know, because it's like I say, I like it's one of the reasons why I've written a lot of stuff in a lot of different mediums. You know, I've written for TV, radio, video games, short stories, long things, comic books, what have you. Because it's all writing, right? At the end of the day,
sure.
It's all story.
Stories, storytelling.
Yeah. But I like the fact that it stretches a different muscle. You like going back to the toolbox analogy. You know, if you use a screwdriver for your novel, for a comic book, it's a socket wrench, and for something else, it's a hammer, right? And it's like, and if you've got all these different tools in your toolkit, when you come to write another thing, it makes you a better writer. That's why I like to try all those different things.
Kind of makes you more complete in a way.
Yeah.
So let's see. My son is a rabid Doctor Who fan. We actually went to a family vacation in Cardiff just so he could go to the museum there. And so that kind of got me thinking about the fan base for the various mediums that you've been involved in, TV and video games, books, and all that stuff. So I guess I'm kind of curious, what group of fans have been the most vocal in support based on the different industries that you've been involved in? Like, who do you hear from the most, do you think?
You know, there's a lot of passionate fans out there.
Yeah.
And I kind of say that with like passionate, right?
Yeah.
You know, and for that you mean there are people who kind of like absolutely love what you do, and there are other people who want to burn you at the stake. and sometimes
I know that part.
And sometimes it's the same group of fans, right? You know,
Yeah.
and I've always been one of those kind of people where if someone says to me, "Do you want to write for this franchise, this intellectual property?" If it's not something I'm not personally a fan of, I'm like, you know, I don't think so, because I want to write. If like, I'll give you an example, right? Firewall, right here is the time novel that I did for the Tom Clancy Splinter Cell video game.
Right.
I love those games. I played every single one of them. And when the opportunity, the publisher who's working on this, they said, "Oh, we've got the rights to the Clancy games," and the editor was an old friend of mine. I called him up straight away. I went, "I want to do Splinter Cell. You don't give that to anybody else but me. I want Splinter Cell." And he was like, "Well, Jim," and I'm like, "Come on, man, let me do Splinter Cell." And I just gave him the full court press. And he said, "Well, look, okay, you know, I know you, I trust you. We'll let you do the first one."
That's awesome.
And for me, that's like, it's like writing a love letter to a game that I absolutely adored.
Right.
And,
Cool.
And I had so much fun doing it because I'm a fan. And I wrote the novel that I thought that I, as a fan, would want to read, because I've read all of the other novels, all the other time novels based on that franchise.
Yeah.
I want to write the book that I would like to read. So that's what always goes through my head when I'm thinking about how you write for a fan base. But in terms of like, you know, the level of passion, I think you get different. Each fan base has its own kind of personality, you know. I think like Doctor Who fans like to think they're kind of a bit more intellectual.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
Right. True.
Star Trek fans, I've always meant are so warm and loving and really open, giving people. I'd say that the fans of like the Warhammer franchise, probably that's one I've worked for a lot. Those guys are crazy. and yeah, I mean, I've had so much fun with them, and that's probably been the experience where I've met the broadest kind of family of people who you wouldn't expect to be interested in a game with little plastic soldiers, people from all different walks of life. Certainly, the most times I've met people, veterans as well. It's so many veterans and Warhammer fans. I've had incredible experiences. A guy once spoke to me. He was an ex gangbanger from LA who was into
Warhammer.
And I was like, wow, okay.
Really?
And he told me this story. He took off his shirt and he shows me like where he's been shot twice.
Jeez.
And he said, like, you know, there was a drive-by shooting by my house. My brother, my dad got shot. And I nearly got killed and I went into hospital. And while I was in there, I'm reading your Warhammer book. And I'm like, wow. I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm glad I could help. Give him somewhere to go to.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend said to me, you really don't understand how you gave that guy a place to go away from the dark life that he was in.
Yeah.
You saved somebody.
I'm just writing adventure stories here, you know. You never know how your stories are going to touch people. And that kind of intensity of fandom it's humbling.
Yeah.
And it's also thrilling to go, wow, I'm glad my story could touch you closely, that it could give you somewhere to go, that it could give you something positive in your life. But also it kind of makes you step back and go, you know, you don't know how your work will affect a person out there in the world. You may think this is just an adventure story.
Yeah.
But for somebody, it might be an escape from a terrible situation that they're in. And that to me I always kind of got that in the back of my mind.
That's pretty amazing. Not to make light of it, but you don't see. You were talking about you've written in so many franchises, but like no one dresses up for like Tom Clancy, Rainbow Six. Like, but
well,
sure.
I've seen I've
really?
seen gamers.
I was gonna say most people, you know, dress up like Comic-Con and dressing up in Star Trek or Star Wars or Warhammer or Doctor Who, but the adventure writing, being able to escape from, and people, that's why they read those stories and want to be able to escape from what may be their shitty life, and be able to you know, be in the shoes of someone else.
I mean,
So.
one of the and another one I got to tell you about as well is a guy who came to one of our Warhammer signings, and he's a big guy, he's a veteran, and he puts down this book, this copy of one of the paperbacks, and it looks like it's been dragged for 20 miles behind a Humvee. It's just things beaten up.
Yeah.
And he opens it up, and sand falls out.
Oh.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, I was reading this in Kandahar a couple of weeks ago."
Oh man.
And we were all like, and I was like, what? And I was like, "Man, this is really beaten up." I was like, "Should we could probably just give you a better copy?" And he's like, "No, this is the book that went all around my unit. Everybody in my unit read this.
It's got a lot of meaning to it.
Like, so could you sign it?" And I think, wow, here I am writing a story about sci-fi space marines doing stuff, and here's a guy who's really getting shot at.
Yeah.
Really sharp end of the real thing, escaping into one of our novels. And it's like, it's a sobering experience to have that.
Yeah. Oof.
Well, I think you're a little bit psychic because you keep answering my questions before I ask them. So I'm going to tweak this one a little bit. I think it's safe to say that your career is the embodiment of so many writers and fans' dreams. I mean, you worked on iconic brands, as we've mentioned, Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, Doctor Who, the Clancy universe, Halo. I could continue. And I apologize for any animosity this creates in Chris as you live his ideal life.
You do, brother. You do.
But my real question has to do with immersion in those worlds. You said earlier that you wouldn't, this is where you answer my question, that you wouldn't write something you weren't interested in. How many of those worlds did you get into and find out, wow, I thought I knew a bunch about Halo, or I thought I knew a bunch about Star Trek, but I learned a ton during this process? Or did you just pretty much, were you a fish in water?
That's a good question. I mean, well, to take the two that you mentioned there, right? Halo and Star Trek. So I grew up watching Star Trek. That was like the show that when I would come from school in the 80s on BBC TV, Mum's in the kitchen making dinner, I'd turn on TV, it would be Star Trek.
Yeah.
So that's the fish in water thing for me, because I've watched that my entire life. I know those characters backwards and forwards. So when someone says to me, "Do you want to do something in that universe?" For me, it's like putting on a pair of comfortable shoes.
Sure.
And I'm confident enough in my own background. I mean, I may occasionally make the odd mistake. That's why they got editors, right? But
yeah,
I feel like I know that world enough that I could just write it from zero. Halo, again, I love those video games. And it was one of those things where I thought, man, I'd love to write in that world, because it's the fusion of some of my favorite stuff. It's got like really cool high concept sci-fi, great military science fiction as well, really interesting, compelling characters. And I honestly didn't think I would ever have the opportunity. I had a couple of friends who'd done Halo books, and I was like, man, I'm so jealous. Oh, I'd love to do that. And then they changed publishers, and they went to a publisher I was already working for. And again, I called up the editor and went, "Are you doing any Halo stuff?" Because I'd love to do Halo. And he said, "Well, we've got a short story anthology. You want to do that?" And so that was my opportunity. I thought, that's great. I can just get in there and do like a small story. It doesn't have to be a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I thought I really had a handle on it. And the guys at Bungie, it was at Microsoft then at that point, they had like laser-like senses. They were like, "No, that rifle is a bolt action sniper rifle. You have it as a semi-automatic." "No, I think you'll find that this guy would have been on this planet at this time, not that one."
Wow.
And that was terrific for me, because I didn't want to look like an idiot.
Well, yeah.
Right? And
bad reviews.
but they every note they gave me, none of it impacted. None of it was like an anchor on the story dragging me down. It was all like, "Oh, you could." It was kind of like, "This is cool, but we could do this thing." And it's immediately like, "Oh, that makes it so much better." And that's, it's the sort of experience you get when you have a great editor who says to you, what would make your story better is if you did this thing. And they always give you great advice. With people who work on an intellectual property, on an IP, if you get somebody like that, someone who is a fan of the franchise, who says, this would really be a very cool thing if you could just tickle this little thing here, a little kiss with history here, a little nod from this character. And I love doing that stuff. I love meshing all these stories in. So that was a learning experience for me. That was definitely one of those things where I thought I knew the series, and it's like, no, there's like reams and reams of stuff that was completely beyond me.
Wow.
There's a lesson to be learned. You know, a lot of aspiring writers or even established writers watch our show, but there's a lesson to be learned here. It's twice you've talked about it, how you've reached out to the editor or the publishing company and be like, I want in on this series. Give me this series. Let me write this series. And you were confident with your own abilities that you could actually do that.
Yeah.
That's something to take away from this show, definitely.
I mean, I've always said that the two most important pieces of advice, whenever people say to me, what advice would you give to other writers? The first thing is 2 words: finish it.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you're doing, finish it. Because I talk to so many like young writers or kind of wannabe writers, and they say, well, I started work on a thing and I got about halfway through it and I didn't like it, so I put it down, and I did another thing and I didn't really finish that. And I said, look, you know what? I don't want to be rude here, but you're not a writer, you're a dilettante. Because until you land it, until you put that plane back down on the runway, you haven't done the whole experience. You know, nobody wants their plumber to half plumb their sink in. Nobody wants to bake it or half bake their cake, right? No editor wants half a story.
Yeah.
And the key thing is that if you finish that story, even if you get to the end of it and you go, you know what, I'm not happy with this, this sucks, that is a good thing, because it means you have developed the critical tools to be able to understand your own self. And that ties into the other point about being confident, is you have to have a clear-eyed, honest view of how good you are. You know, look at the work of other writers and go, wow, that guy's great, that guy's cool, that guy's cool.
Yeah.
Do that all day long.
And say, what am I good at? What am I not strong at? You know, where are my weak points? And be honest and clear-eyed about it. Because if you think everything you do is fantastic, you're wrong.
Yeah.
There's got to be something you don't do well. Be honest with yourself. And then once you can do that, once you can be your own first editor, you can present your work strongly and say, look, here's my thing. I think it might be a little bit weak here. You can find collaborators who will help you lift up the areas of your work that perhaps you're not the best at. But you have to have that honesty first and foremost.
That's good
Great
advice.
stuff. Great stuff.
And I think confidence comes from that too. You know, if you know what you're good at, you can walk into a room and say, I can do that thing. And you'll carry yourself with that honesty, with that confidence. It's difficult. People always talk about, like, you know, imposter syndrome. You have that feeling like, oh man, I don't know
Everybody.
if I should, you know, and I have that. You know, I talk to other writers. People say to me, wow, you're so prolific, you've written so much work, you know, you're at the top of your game. And I'm like, I don't feel like I am. I feel like I'm just a jobbing, working writer.
Still proving it.
People out there who I absolutely admire, who are doing so much amazing stuff. And I think, wow, I wish I could be doing that guy's job. And maybe he's thinking the same thing about me. But that to me is what kind of drives you forward, makes you want to have that kind of will to succeed, that will to look for new stuff and new horizons to tell story in.
Wow.
So I've told Mike and Sean that, considering all the franchises you've written for, and we've talked about, you know, Star Trek, Doctor Who, some of my favorite, like I want to be in your shoes. You're talking about the imposter syndrome. Like, I want to be the imposter in your shoes. But this interview, I mean, generally our interviews are a set length of time. We could actually talk for several hours. I know I could definitely talk to you for several hours about some of the franchises you've worked with. But if you had to pick one of those that you were most nervous about writing for, which
I
would
thought you were
be?
going to say pick your favorite, but
No, pick your favorite. No,
I do that to you.
no. What was your most, like, you're like, holy shit, I got it. Now I'm gonna have to do it.
man, that is a good question. Oh, geez.
Was it Stargate? I
No,
love Stargate. No.
Stargate. I was Stargate. I knew that show pretty well. I'd actually pitched a couple of ideas to the TV show that had never gone anywhere, so I felt kind of.
Did you really?
confident.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't go anywhere with it, though, but
Yeah, but still, to be able to, that's just cool.
I felt confident about that. I was like, oh, I know this show. I know these. I knew the voice.
Right.
It's the voice, right? That's the thing about there's a kind of ephemeral thing about doing an IP, right? It's like, and you can give it different words. You can talk about textuality or granularity. I always say the voice of the IP, right? It's like, you know when it's not right.
Yes,
It's
definitely.
always easy to say, to point at a thing and go, that's correct, but you damn well know it when it's wrong.
Yeah, sure.
And that's the hard part to do. I think if I had to pick the one, I think I would probably say the Clancy stuff, because I you know, when people ask me like, what writers do you admire, and I always say that the kind of the three guiding lights, certainly for my thriller writing career: Fleming, Clancy, Ludlum, and those are the writers those are the thriller writers that I grew up reading. You know, because Fleming has taught me that kind of about how to describe stuff, and that kind of whip crack kind of narrative that he has is really great. Sort of, you know, that's a great lesson to learn. Clancy has that just like laser guided attention to detail and the ability to show you like a dozen different characters and mesh that all together into one narrative. And then Ludlum just has the propulsive, I've got to read the next chapter kind of bang, keeps you glued to the book, right? And I think those are the lessons that I learned from those three guys. So when I got the opportunity to do something with Tom Clancy's name on it, I was like, I do not want to fuck this up.
Right.
Because to me, it feels like, just to do respect to the brand and the IP, I have to do the best job I possibly can.
Right.
So yeah, I think I was quite daunted by that, but also, you know, every sort of obstacle is an opportunity. So I looked at it and thought, well, okay, don't be afraid of this, dive right in, you know, and just, so I drew on what I knew I could do, which was my love for the franchise. I'm like, draw from that. Don't think about how people are going to judge you. Just do the best story that you can. Do the work and try and live it down. Right? That's the credo to work to.
Oh, so there's something else writers can take away from this interview now. It was awesome.
That's right.
It's awesome.
Well, you have all these opportunities and options with all this different type of work you've done over the years. How do you determine, do you have any method to your madness, or how do you determine what to work on next? Because you could have done another Dane book. You could have done other things, I'm sure. So what are maybe some of your decision criteria on determining what project or what you're going to throw yourself into at the next moment?
You know, it's nice of you to say that as if I actually know what I'm doing.
We certainly
smoke
don't.
And mirrors. It's smoke and mirrors, James. Smoke and mirrors.
I mean, it's I think certainly early on in my career, I kind of just went where the wind blew me, because when you know what it's like when you're starting off and you feel like, if I don't say yes to everything that's offered to me, tomorrow the phone will never ring and I'll never work again. And so someone says, would you like to work on the thing? And you say yes in a loud, clear voice. Absolutely. You know, and you take that job, and sometimes it leads you to great places, but then there are other times where it's like you may find yourself just, you know, you are literally being pushed by the wind and you don't have like a career path. And I could honestly say that a lot of my early writing is that. I mean, not that I didn't have a lot of great opportunities, but I didn't have like a plan in mind. I'm going to start here and finish there. You know, I wasn't that organized, and I don't think I still am. You know, I think I have a kind of general idea of what the kind of thing I'd like to do, but I feel as long as I'm just writing, I'm happy, because that's the, you know, I had a crappy day job once and I quit to become a full-time writer, and I never looked back, and it's the best decision I ever made. And as long as I can keep doing that, I think I will remain a happy man. So if I kind of drifted off the question.
No,
that makes me happy. That's a great answer.
I mean,
I think you're being very honest about like how it's, you know, how it progresses forward for yourself. So
yeah, I mean, I do, you know, I do kind of look around at sometimes, like I see IPs and franchises, and I think, man, I would love to tell a story in that world. I mean, with the Clancy thing is it was Aconite Books, run by Mark Gascoigne, who's an old friend of mine from another publisher. And the company that owns them is called Asmodee, and they own these board game franchises. Okay. So they wanted to do novels based on their board game franchise. And he said to me, you know, I know you're a big gamer, you know, is there anything here you fancy? And I said, well, these are all kind of cool, but there's nothing here that really kind of excites me. And I'm lucky I'm at a stage in my career now where I can kind of be a bit more choosy. You know, it used to be where I had to say yes to everything. Now I can go, well, I want to pick the thing that I think is cool, not necessarily the thing that will make me $1 million, although that would be lovely. If someone comes to me and says, here's a cool thing, maybe there's not a lot of money in it, but I'm like, but it excites me. I want to do that. So I'm lucky that I can do that. And And so I said, well, maybe we'll talk about it. And then he came back to me and said, we're negotiating with Ubisoft. And I said, oh, like just like the Ubisoft games. He said, no, the Clancy stuff as well. So like Rainbow Six, The Division, Ghost Recon, and Splinter Cell, all games that I love. And I practically bit his hand off to say that, to do that. I said, because I love these games, and so that was only because that opportunity just kind of passed me by. I didn't kind of go out seeking it. So I heard about it and I just jumped on it. I think a lot of new writers, these days I see young writers who seem to have a lot better battle plan than I did. I kind of consider myself more of the sort of the wilderness hunter model. I would kind of go out into the wilderness looking for something to kill and eat, drag back to my cave. Whereas these guys seem to have more like the kind of top-down God's eye view of the whole map. Yeah. And they know exactly where they're going. And I think maybe if I'd had that at the beginning of my career, I would have gone in a very different way.
Well, do you happen to know what you're going to do next? What's your next project that you're looking forward to? So tell us a little bit about.
Yeah. So right now, I've just done a little bit of work on a Tom Clancy video game, which I can't really talk about much more than that right now. Only like a really small sort of thing. I am currently working on the next Splinter Cell tie-in novel, which hasn't been officially announced yet. And after that, I'm going to be doing another standalone novel for Welbeck, the guys who published Airside. And we're I'm in the research phase for that right now. So I'm kind of gathering all my material, interviewing people and visiting locations and stuff like that. And just kind of, one of the stages that I really like of doing these sort of things is where you just get all this stuff.
Yeah.
And there's like, there's cool bits of little nuggets of story in here. And you're kind of digging through it going, I'm going to keep that. I'm going to use this. I'm going to use that. Wow. So I'm, in the sort of discovery phase of that book, I'm really enjoying putting all that together.
Hey, what was the title of that Splinter Cell?
The new one? I can't tell you.
Chris is trying to get you in trouble.
Trying. Sorry, James. Always trying.
Don't be bitter, Chris. He has your dream career. Don't be bitter.
I know he does. I know.
Well, now that our jealousy is on full-on work here, we want to toast the end of the main portion of our interview. But now we go on to what's called the lightning round. And over in Europe and England, I know this is a very dangerous moment for us to try not to ruin your career. So limber up, take a drink, and let's see. Well,
it won't be worse than sitting in the air side of an airport.
All right, question one. Who is the only British writer to have written a Star Trek episode? It might be you.
Me. Well, technically, I didn't write the episode. I wrote a story premise that the episode was based on.
Close enough. We call that a win, right?
Judges, judges count that. The judges have counted that.
I would say that's when that happened to me. One of my editors said to me, like, that's going to be the thing they carve on your gravestone, right? That you did Star Trek, and I was like, I'm all right with that.
Oh yeah.
I would definitely be okay with that.
Number 2, a recent CIA secret document was published, and there is a shocking revelation that reverberates across the globe that you, James Swallow, were the never before revealed 6th member of the Beatles. We want to know what instrument you played and why did you split from the group?
I'm more of a Van Halen guy, I got to be honest. But, just would be, electric guitar, bro,
Yeah. All right. So you were making somebody look bad that was the other electric guitar player. I get it.
And he split from the group to join Van Halen. So
that's right. Yeah.
He taught Eddie everything. Okay. Number 3, here in the United States, we have a sport called soccer. Why hasn't that caught on in England?
I like your ball of bases game. I find that very, very enjoyable.
Okay. Gotcha.
I got taken out when I was in LA. I got taken out to see my very first ball game by some friends of mine who were working on Star Trek, and they said, like, do you want to come and see an actual live baseball game? and I was like, wow, it's like the quintessential American experience that for us as Brits, we kind of see it in movies. And for you guys, it's just kind of, it's just a ball game. Yeah. And I was like a kid in a candy store.
It's the weirdest cricket game I've ever seen. Yeah.
And at one point, the batter broke his bat on the ball.
Yeah.
And the end just like flew over and just like hit the ground like a lightning bolt. And I was like, oh my God, did you see that?
Sometimes those bats go into the audience.
And everybody else was just kind of like, yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I was like, that was awesome.
What do you think of the beer prices?
Yeah.
I had drunk a lot of that beer by that point, actually.
Go broke.
Absolutely brilliant.
Well, I'm up next, and I'll continue the let's see, our British theme here. But I won't ask you about Spotted Dick. We had a long discussion with Adam Hamdy about Spotted Dick, so I think we got all the bases covered.
I'm flattered, man, but I don't swing that way. It's
See, I knew he was.
One universe you have not written in yet is the James Bond universe, or at least I didn't see credits for it. Give us the title of the book, or a title of the film, or the main villain's name in the James Swallow version of Bond.
That's a great question.
This could be where his career goes down the toilet. There we go.
And that's question. We'll edit down the time.
2 hours later.
Kill me every time. There you go. That would be the title of it.
Kill me every time.
I like it.
It's actually pretty.
Yeah, that's actually pretty damn good.
I'm actually writing that one down.
I would love to. I mean, you talk about like the kind of the pinnacle of the mountain of IPs to do Bond. I mean, you said earlier about what would daunt me. That would really, that would have me shaking in my shoes, but also have me like giddy,
right?
Awake for a month. Yeah.
Well, that will be the crew review's mission then, is to campaign for James Swallow to get a Bond.
Yeah, there we go.
Story.
I'm on it.
Okay, my second question: what single bit of technology across the sci-fi universe you've written in do you wish you had access to?
There's two ways you can answer. In practical sense, Star Trek transporter, because
who wouldn't?
No more traffic jams, no more worry. You go anywhere you like. That would be super cool to have. But in terms of fun, it would be the Star Trek holodeck, right? Because then
I would never leave it. I would never leave it.
Would you turn safety protocols off?
Depends how much I've had to drink. Come on, it'll be fine.
I can kick his ass.
It's just Capone. Whatever. Shoot you.
I can beat those Klingons up. It'll be great. Yeah.
Okay, my last question is actually more practical. I've been to Italy, but I have not been to England yet, and it's something that's on the near future for my wife and I. There are a number of obvious tourist sites in London and the surrounding area, and but tell me a place that's not in the guides or that's on the back page of the guides that a visitor should absolutely see in the London area.
It's tough for me to narrow it down because London's like my home city, and I feel like it's my own personal property. How you have that kind of love for where you live, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh man, I'd want to take you on a tour bus around all of the cool places. I guess if I had to pick somewhere that there's not a lot of places that are kind of obscure, because everyone goes, oh yeah, I've heard of that. I mean, like there's like the silver workshops near Piccadilly. It's like that's a really kind of obscure little place. This little underground silver market. Which is very, very cool. Or it's not that obscure, but I would say go up the Shard with the best view of London, because that is just incredible to be up the top of there. But that's pretty touristy though.
Yeah, I went to a pub that was like older than in my country. And I was just like, you have a lot of those sitting in there and just feeling like, oh my, I can't imagine the conversations if these walls could talk that could tell you over the centuries.
You know what I was surprised about? The pizza. So I'm from New Jersey, New York City area, and nothing but Italians make the pizza in that area, and generally everywhere. But in London, not so. There's not too many Italians making the pizza there.
We do have some really great Italian restaurants, but it tends to be London Italian restaurants tend to be like not pizza, because pizza is weirdly seen as like an American thing in the UK.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, even though it's Italian, right, it's seen as like an American culture thing. So if you go to an Italian restaurant, most of them are kind of like, oh, we don't do pizza here. So it's, you know, it's very sort of, you know, a lot more kind of like home cooking Italian kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, pasta and macaroni, but not the pizza. You don't go to London for the pizza.
No,
you go for breakfast.
For the curry. We do that
right.
pretty well.
Yeah.
Is it my turn, Sean? Am I up?
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
All right. So American tourists have a notoriously bad reputation, I guess, right? To be fair, the Brits aren't far behind us, though. But which group of tourists do you believe are the kindest and most courteous?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, some of my countrymen do kind of like, you know, make asses of themselves when they're abroad. I'm sorry to say.
I think we have that cornered.
To be honest, I mean, and some of my American friends also make asses.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Frankly, Canadians are the most curious. You know, I would have to say
it.
Because
Damn it.
the thing about the Canadians is, I think that they combine the best aspects of the Brits and the Americans. Is they're polite like us British guys, but they're brash like you Americans.
Yeah.
What about Wait. What about French Canadians though?
See, now I love French Canadians. I have to say that because I have a lot of friends in Montreal who'd be very upset with me.
We know one in particular. He's actually too nice.
Yeah.
He's actually too nice.
Simon, we love you.
Yeah, we do. All right. Here's my second question. In Star Trek, there's a prime directive. For someone who lives under a rock, the prime directive is prohibits Starfleet from interfering in the normal development of any society. But do you, James, know Starfleet Order number 2?
Starfleet Order number 2. Oh God, that's not the one about Talos 4. You can't go to Talos 4.
No.
That one.
That's so funny that you even. Well, of course you would know that.
Of course he knows that.
I'm blanking. It's the start. No, is it General Order number 4 is there? No, I'm blanking on that one. I got to say.
So I actually, when I was thinking of this question, I was like, I don't even know if there's a, they always talk about the prime directive. So I had to look it up. And if you believe the animated series as canon, it's against the taking of intelligent life. That's Starfleet Order number 2.
That's true. That sounds like a Star Trek thing.
Yeah. All right. So as we've discussed, you've written across several different genres, but would you say is the most lucrative one to write in?
Oh, lucrative. That's one of those kind of how long is a piece of string questions, though, right? Because it's all down to like,
just pick one. It makes me happy.
how I mean, I know science fiction writers who, work really, really hard and they don't get the recognition that they deserve.
Yeah.
I know other guys who, are sci-fi writers who are coining it, and so I think for me personally, the most success I've had as a writer in terms of like profile and money in my pocket has been writing for thrillers.
Oh wow.
Awesome.
But the science fiction is a very different market. I have a friend who writes urban fantasy novels, and he's always going on book tours, and he's got like a hugely passionate fan base. And I said to him, I don't get half as much fan mail. We write the same kind of level of books and we get paid that kind of the same kind of money, but I don't get half as much fan mail as he does. And he says, because that fan base is just much more intense. Love for it, and I think, not that I would trade the stuff that I do for all the tea in China. I love getting to write the kind of stuff I do, but I think that's not an easy metric to measure anything by, And at the end of the day, if you want to be a writer for the money, man, are you in the wrong business?
Yes, so true.
Because you know what? It's like, we are the guys who are always paid last.
Oh, yeah.
And we are the ones who are kind of like, when they make the movie, they're kind of like, yeah, thanks, bye. And we'll show you the door now, right?
Right.
I used to do a writer's workshop for writing in video games, and it would be like a day-long workshop, and we would break for lunch. And before we did the break for lunch, I would do the 10 myths about being a writer. And so I would walk up and down the line of all my students, and I would say, okay, 10 things. First of all, you will always be paid last. No one gives a damn what your idea is. and blah, 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 blah. And I would go through all of the worst things about being a writer and just break the hearts of all of people. And the reason I did it at lunch is because anybody who wasn't serious would not come back in the afternoon.
Oh.
You know, they would just go off to lunch. And if you didn't see them again, I'd be like, yeah, you were never gonna make it anyway.
Would you actually see like there wasn't that many people that came back?
There were a few times where people just wouldn't come back.
Wow.
People who like thought like, but I've got a brilliant idea and everybody's gonna love it. And it's like, nope, that's not how this works.
Or it's been done before.
But the most rewarding thing was once I did that one time, and at the end of the session, I said, right, okay, we all decamped down to the pub and we all kind of unwind and chat about the day.
Yeah.
And one of the students came over to me and she said, you know, when you said that to me, you frightened the shit out of me. And I said, yeah, but you came back and you're still here. And she said, yeah. And I said, you still want to be a writer? And she said, yes. I've done my job then. Because I want you to go out into the world clear-eyed and, you know, knowing that, you know, you are about to set foot in a meat grinder. So you got to toughen up. Because, you know, I didn't want to be one of those kind of teachers who says like, everything you do is fabulous.
Yeah.
And you're all perfect little snowflakes and everybody's going to love you and everything you do is great.
And here's your trophy.
Here's your trophy, right? It's like, no, you know what? It's hard, it's brutal. And I would be remiss if I don't send you out there wearing a suit of armor. Because it's going to be tough. And, you know, and I always felt like that was something that I had to do. And that kind of ethos is something that stuck with me all through my writing career.
Well, James, it's been a real pleasure meeting you. We talked about this sidebar before you came on. We loved your story here, Airside, your standalone.
I took notes.
Folks, if you have any interest in any kind of medium, I'm sure James has done it. So check out his website and look to see what he's done. You've given some really good information for writer hopefuls, and you've talked about, you know, the different kind of mediums and what people can get involved in, and not just, you know, authoring fiction. There's all kinds of other ways to go about pursuing a career in this. So thank you so much for coming on. We know it's kind of late on your end, and we'd love to have you back anytime.
Yeah, brother.
About your next
Absolutely.
project.
Definitely.
I really appreciate it. You know, and it's never a chore to kind of come on and talk about writing, about books with other people who are enthusiastic about it. So thank you for having me.
And this, by the way, is a great book to read if your flight has been canceled or delayed.
Take care, James. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Boys,
Yes, sir.
Mr. James Swallow, Englishman, on the show today in his newest standalone novel, Airside. It's a fast-paced, exciting book, and we were excited to have him on and talk about that and all the other fun stuff that he's done. And the jealousy amongst us all is impressive.
Yes.
And here we
his
are,
writing skill.
getting ready to outro.
Author and a gentleman.
Author and a gentleman. And here we are, gentlemen, bottoms up. And out.
You would
All
have
right,
enjoyed it.
and I've seen your pictures, so don't even bother.
Not this one.
3, 2, and woof.
No, we're not
What are you
recording.
talking about? We've been recording this whole time.
No, we weren't. You were not recording.
Damn, I should have let you do it and then went, hi. Now, okay, great. Now record it.
That was good. Now, could you just record that? And Chris is going to show me something I'm excited to see.
Totally don't even have to. I just put my arm up there and you put it up there so that everybody else can see what I'm about to do, and I don't have to, and you screwed yourself.
The disappointment abounds.
No, I can still see what I was going to put up, and it's not disappointing at all.
All right. Here's the outro for James Swallow and Airside in 3, 2, and meow.